Hello and welcome back to another episode of Empower You podcast. I am your host, Michael Abney, and just here today to shine a little bit more light on the pathway to living life more consciously, a little bit more aware. How I do that is I share stories with amazing people from all around the world. And today we are joined by Alan. Sorry, I forgot your name there for a second because I was just thinking he's coming to us from Australia. That's the furthest away. He's also coming from a completely other day. I'm filming this. It's 2 o'clock here, and you're 7 a.m. bright and fresh down in Australia. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. You reached out. Your submission was about a subject that a lot of people, a lot of conversations about it. Everybody's kind of got their thing with it. We've all had to deal with alcohol in our life in some way, shape or form. For me, it was never something that was I actually didn't like the taste of it for most of my life. And from having your perspective coming from alcoholism and talking about your journey, I can't wait for you to share that with us. So take us away. How did this journey begin for you?
Okay. Like so many people who found their way to alcoholism, it starts in childhood. So it starts very young. I came from what we call in polite society today a dysfunctional family background. It was a violent family background. It was a very oppressive, violent family background, and so I was born into an environment of fear. And whether it's violence or it could be psychological harm, but when you're born into you live in an oppressive environment where you have this raised sense of anxiety. You live as a small child in a heightened sense of alertness. Now, this is where if you're feeling fear, then it activates our fight-flight response, and so you're constantly in this state of alertness, heightened alertness, and you learn to become a liar. You learn to con the people around you to stay out of trouble. I'm from a family of 4 children, and with a violent father, and in order to avoid his wrath, we used to work as a team, and this is a lot of this stuff went on, but eventually he was to leave the family home, and I was about 14, 15 at the time, and what happens then, you have this incredible sense of relief. And it was the 1970s, so it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and we discovered drugs and alcohol. When you have you come from a situation of that sort of ongoing anxiety, where you have that state of heightened alertness all the time. I mean, that's trauma. That's the definition of trauma. So I've suffered this childhood trauma. I'm in this kind of heightened state of anxiety. Most of the time I'm always looking over my shoulder, ready for someone to hit me, sort of thing. And then I drink alcohol, and the effect is just that much more powerful than when the average person drinks alcohol. So the average person who drinks alcohol goes from maybe this level, normality, up. When you're living in a state or living with anxiety, and you're suffering this sort of minor ongoing trauma, you're coming from down here. Wow! So whenever you take a mind-altering substance, the effect is profound, and that's why people who've suffered trauma, anxiety, that sort of stuff, that sort of background, are far more prone to becoming to using mind-altering substances, because they have a far more profound effect. So I went into...
I've never thought about trauma the way you explained trauma before. So I just thank you for that.
Yeah.
I have it as it's... I've never had the awareness to... Thank you. This is amazing. That is what that is that, we're born and we're just, being us. And then you are I grew up in that same time period. And I know exactly what you're talking about, and they were doing the best job they could, but they were frantic, that's how I felt my entire childhood was But for me it was a different drug, but I totally relate to what you just said, but I've never had that. Yeah. Wow, thank you. That's actually amazing.
I think So a lot of people aren't aware of that. And I've actually come across people who are, sober alcoholics. They've had quite lengthy recoveries, and I've shared that with them, and they've gone, gee, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I was more prone to these mind-altering substances because of my background and the fact that it was giving me such a bigger hit than a normal person. It gives you a much bigger hit. And of course, it's like the elixir of life. We describe it. To me, it was the elixir of life when I discovered alcohol. All this stress, all this tension, all this stuff completely melted away. So I was to go on into my 20s, and the one thing I had going for me, it was the 1980s. And my background, I'm an electronics. I'm a technical officer in electronics. I was a technical officer in electronics, and I was right in the middle of the computer boom, the personal computer revolution in the 1980s. So I was sort of lucky in that way that I had this good career, and I was making plenty of money, but the money was just feeding the habit. And you make the fast buck doesn't stick, and I just drink it away. And what actually happened to me, there were 4 of us children. My older sister Shani was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I was 26, she was 28, and she reached a point we call the rock bottom. And it's really when a person comes to a point in their drinking career, if you want to call it that, where you come to the crossroads, and you're at a point where I'm either going to drink myself to death, I'm going to go to jail, I'm going to get sober. What do I choose to do? Shani reached that point at age 28, and she committed suicide. And that for me was the beginning of the end. After I lost my sister to to alcoholism and drug addiction, I just started drinking more and more and more. And I was to hit my rock bottom about a year and a half later, and I reached out for help, and I was very lucky that the help was there, and I got myself into a detox, into a hospital, into a detox, and that's probably a story worth telling. Came through the door, I was 27 years old, and I was absolutely full of fear, because when you drink, I mean, it turns you into a thief, a cheat, and a liar. And you steal money, you take time off work, and you do all these things in order to drink and pursue your habit. And I thought, so you're riddled with fear because you've sort of come clean and you've admitted you've got a problem and you want to do something about it. And I came into the hospital, and I was full of fear, absolutely full of fear. The only person on the planet that I connected with was my sister Shani. And she died. She'd committed suicide, so she wasn't there anymore. So I thought I was terminally unique. There was no one like me. No one thought like me. No one was in my situation. No one understood me. And so I came into this hospital full of fear. I thought this was sort of payback. I didn't know what was going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen when they first go into a detox clinic. And I was put in a large room, after I was sort of inducted and processed, if you like. And I was put in this large room with about 12 other. It was only a small detox, and there were 12 other patients at the time. And I sat in the corner. I'd seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I thought I'll avoid eye contact and this, and I'll survive this situation. And I thought I was in this sort of terrible situation. And anyway, and I sat in the corner and I mind my own business, but this girl came over. She was manic depressive, and she was having her lithium levels checked, and she was on a high. She was on the up cycle of the manic depressive condition, and she came over and she's, "Hi, my name's Tracy. What's yours?" And she grabbed me by the arm and she dragged me around the room and she introduced me to everyone that was there. "This is Michael. He's a drunk like you, and this is Diane. She's a speed addict." And the next thing I know, we've got the chairs arranged in a circle, and we're all sitting there, this room of complete strangers with all different conditions, and we're all sitting there sharing war stories, empathizing with each other and talking about our emotions, talking about how we're feeling, and just this room full of strangers connecting. And back in those days, we were drinking coffee and we were smoking cigarettes like Mexican bandits. You could smoke inside in those days. And it was an incredible feeling of empathy. I thought I was terminally unique, and I discovered in that incredible morning of my life at age 27 that here I am connected with all these other people who thought like I did, acted like I did, felt the way I did, and had travelled largely the same path that I travelled, and it was incredible. It was just amazing. And then of course I started my journey in recovery. That journey is about stopping drinking, obviously, and putting down whatever that substance is. In order to put that substance down and keep it down, you have to get well. So This is where wellness comes in. So I always say to people, when you think of mental health, think of it on a scale. And usually when you ask someone, how are you? They'll say, oh, I'm well. And they're not well. What they mean is, I'm not sick. So they're saying, I'm here, I'm not sick. This is well. This is unwell. This is illness. This is mental illness. This is wellness. And it's not some homogenous state where you're not sick, but there are levels of wellness. And in order to get well and stay well, one must work at being well. And in order to do that effectively, I went on a journey of discovering how my mind works. We understand our bodies. We understand our, there's my hand. If I get a toothache, I don't put a Band-Aid on my hand. We all know that. That sounds silly, but if I get a sprained ankle, I don't take an aspirin. But we don't understand our minds, and we don't understand. I mean, for instance, I'll give you a simple example. Doctors and nurses get addicted to drugs and alcohol. So everyone has that. Why? Why do you get it? How can they get addicted? They know what this is going to do to them. They know about addiction. They study this stuff. They have all this knowledge, this power, this understanding. Why is it that they get caught in this in the cycle of addiction like everybody else? And the reason for that is because our brain essentially has two main parts: a thinking brain and a feeling brain. And your thinking brain isn't the addictive part of your brain. It's the feeling part of your brain, the more primitive, childlike part of my brain. So it's like we have a neocortex. That's where I do all my rational, logical thinking. That's where I know I shouldn't drink. I know I shouldn't drink. I know I shouldn't take drugs. I used to wake up in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. We call it the alcoholic dawn. And you'd wake up and you're out of booze and you're out of cigarettes and you're out of options and you've been unconscious for 10 hours. You can't get back to sleep. So there's no hiding in sleep. So you're awake and you're left with you're half sober. And you swear in that moment, I won't pick up a drink again. I'll never touch another drink. I'll never drink again. And you mean it. You really, really mean it. And that's your thinking brain. But it's not your thinking brain that has the problem. It's your feeling brain. And the problem is that we train our feeling brain. We don't teach it. So I can teach my thinking brain about the evils of alcohol and drugs and all the rest of it as much as I like, but I can still fall into into the grip of addiction because it's my feeling brain that has the problem. So when we train this part of our brain, we don't teach it, we train it. So I have to train as well as learn to feed my brain. I've got to train that primitive feeling side of my brain, which is largely motivated by instincts, by our survival instincts. So survival instincts, one of the key survival instincts we have is selfishness. We hoard resources. And that's a natural state in survival, and we really have to work hard at overcoming that sort of behavior, because if we act selfishly, that's a bad thing. And that's really what led me to drinking, was the selfish behavior. So I really have to work at not being selfish. I have to go out of my way and I have to maintain spiritual well-being by helping others. And there's a great joy in that. There's a great joy in that. And you often hear people talk about the hole in the soul. I've got a hole in my soul, and they try to fill it, and they fill it with the stuff. They fill it with the junk. They fill it with, bad food. They fill it with, alcohol, drugs, whatever. that hole in your soul, the way to fill it is to fill it with other people. It's to fill it with unselfish behavior. It's to fill it with purpose greater than yourself. And that's what I've had to do. And that's all mental wellness I'm talking about. So I train my brain. I have to talk about the fact that I'm an alcoholic, and and therefore I'm allergic to alcohol. I can't drink. I've got a mental obsession coupled with a physical allergy. So I have to constantly remind myself of that fact, because I've got a great forgettery. My brain loves to forget pain. I love to block pain. I don't want to think about the bad stuff. So I've constantly got to remind myself, and that's the training process. You look at meetings.
How did you do that though? Like, how did you do that, or what was the?
In the beginning, you're drilled in that. I mean, I was in that fellowship that you'll find at the front of the telephone book. So within that fellowship, of course, people often wonder, why do you get up? You talk about drinking. You get up and you all share and you talk about your drinking stories. How the heck does that help? What we're doing is we're reminding ourselves. We're constantly training. We're not learning anything. We're just training. And if I go away from that, if I move away from that and I break the training, eventually I'll go back to drinking. So I have to maintain the training. I have to stay and constantly remind myself, my name's Alan, I'm an alcoholic. My name's Alan, I'm an alcoholic. I can't afford to forget that. And I have to have hope in my life, which is a positive expectation moving forward. Now, to have hope in my life means that I have to have purpose in my life. I have to have something to look forward to. I have to have challenges. I have to have purpose. This is all mental wellness. So mental wellness is about obtaining knowledge of how your brain works, but it's very much a lived program of training yourself, staying mentally well, and being aware of, for instance, you probably notice I like to talk, so that's a really healthy sign. But that's a really healthy sign, because if you look at anyone who's suffering, say, mental illness, the other side of the coin, they don't talk. They're very quiet. We have a saying: it'll isolate you and kill you. So whether it's depression, someone gets depressed, these conditions, they isolate and they stop talking and they stop communicating. And that's really a symptom of mental illness. And a sign of mental wellness is the exact opposite. Talk. So people who talk a lot and share and communicate is a really, really healthy sign. That's this is spiritual health. It's mental health, spiritual health, and of course, to me, physical health. I'm 61 years old. I run 30 kilometers a week. I eat pretty well, but that to me is just like a spin-off of being mentally and spiritually well. So that follows. So it's so important, and I've spent over 30 years in sobriety, and I've got a wonderful life today. I'm married to a beautiful woman, very, very happy. In that marriage, in that relationship. I've had a wonderful career. I've had a couple of careers. I'm working in wellness at this stage, but I have been in the finance industry. I've had a wonderful career and wonderful opportunities because I'm mentally well and spiritually well. And, I'm in a great position to take advantage of any opportunities that come along.
Well, it's like being in a master class. You're like, you really... You took me on a journey with your story, and it reminded me a lot of, like, I didn't take your path, but like I had a similar thing with cocaine, and it was like that was the thing that was amplified for me, and it was also sort of connected to like repressed sexuality stuff, because I grew up in the country. I was gay, but I didn't know it, and all the stuff that goes along with that, and that was like my first like whoa, there was like a whole other identity there. But it was exactly what you shared. But in my mind, that's been, literally been 30 years ago for me too. Yeah. Just did the math.
Yeah.
And so, but like, I was trying to think like how I stopped doing that, like I remember that horrible feeling of, when for me, it was when you ran out, and that could be at any time of day or night, but it was when you ran out. And so that feeling occurred then. And I mean, there was a lady here, her name was Oprah Winfrey. I'm sure you've heard of Oprah Winfrey, right? But she used to have these like spiritual sort of things every Monday. And so I would like, my crappy, I'm never going to do this, always landed at 3:00 when she was having these epiphany things. And that was really part of my awakening and energy and like my understanding of how our belief systems work. And like, it was the pain of like not connecting to that, like, and it was a process of about a year. It was a process of about a year.
Yeah.
But it just did like, and I know that alcohol is not the same as the addiction, but my sense is like, at some level, we're all sort of wounded, in our childhoods. And like, there's people that are addicted to sugar. There's people that are addicted to everything. Like, I know people that are hoarders, like what you said. And that's like from, we all have this energy of like, not the things that we create physically are this like from our perceived void of when we were younger. And I just find it fascinating, you're the themes, finding the threads between all of us that connect all of us together. And for me, it was service. I love being in service. I was in a service industry. Yeah. I did hair. Like, it was a thing that lit me up like no tomorrow. But there was a place in my life where I was like, it's been 20 years. And it was like, I knew intuitively this part of my life, I'm not supposed to be this for the rest of my life. And then that's what led to but if I don't have service at the core of what I'm doing. So you point on with that, like, keeping you what I loved in what you wrote was about your like staying, like how to stay in that vibration and training. That training for you is that community. And like, I connected to a spiritual community. So it's like, there's this beautiful tapestry of similarities, but the core of all of it was, I
mean, they're beautiful. We're all different. Thank God. And, but the whole disease concept, whether it's cocaine, whether it's gambling, as you say, all those things, overeating, sugar,
sex,
it's the same thing. It's the same. There's so many of them, but that the underpinning, the underlying story is common. It is a common process, and I always come back. It's simply a disease of self. In virtually every case, it's a disease of self. And, we live in a world where, I mean, we're designed to survive. I'll give you an example. There's attitude of gratitude. It's a lovely saying. Have an attitude of gratitude. I complained I had no shoes until I met a man with no feet. So have an attitude of gratitude. We're not wired to do that because we're wired to survive, which means that we're wired to think about the negatives. We're actually, is there a threat? Is there a problem? Is there something I need to sort out? What do I need to be doing? Is there something, am I going to get fed tomorrow? Is there a roof over my head? So we're designed, we're wired to deal with all those negatives and all those potential problems. And that's survival. That's okay. That's fair enough. But you've got to focus on the positives. You've got to say, hang on, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. Look at all the wonderful things that are happening to me. Look how terrific my life is. So we have to really work at, that attitude of gratitude, and that's got to be a real conscious thing, because subconsciously, our mind's saying, deal with the problem, anticipate the problem. You've got to get out of that mode of thinking. And I think that's, so many people in the world today, and I mean, we often say, I feel sorry for the earthlings who haven't had to go through some sort of struggle, because in having gone through your struggle, whatever that happens to be, it's an awakening. So I have to deal with this. I can't just go along and ignore it. I'm just not going to float through life and nothing's going to change. I've got a problem and I've got to deal with it. And, my bolt of lightning was alcohol. Your bolt of lightning, is the cocaine. But whatever it is, you're forced to open your eyes up and we learn through pain. It's an unfortunate thing, but we learn through pain. We enjoy the pleasure, but we learn through pain. And that's the reality of the situation. Now, I don't want to go back to pain. And by staying well and maintaining wellness, well-being, I don't have to go back there. And you've said it yourself that, you fill that hole in your soul with service to others. That's you're filling that hole in your soul. You don't, you go to bed every night thinking, oh, look what I did today. I did this. What am I going to do tomorrow? This. Your life is full. It's full, and it's full of a purpose that's greater than yourself.
Yeah. Right? So it's like on the spectrum, we learn the thing, and then we turn that thing into the thing that we share back to each other. Because I'm like 57, I'll be 57 in a couple of months, and like, I definitely am aware I'm in my wisdom phase, and like my context of my life has shifted, and like it's the only thing that lights me up, is this ability that, hey, I get to craft how this looks. I get to like, what was that thing that like had me X? And today, like on the call, you've got me, I never thought about that part of my journey, and thank you for making me aware of that. Like, it's really powerful because I can see how that has given me the ability to go through other things in my life that were like insurmountable, like I can just see like, yeah. And so this opened a big door for me today. So thank you, Alan. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just like that shift of like when we change the way we're looking. One of my favorite quotes ever is by Wayne Dyer, and it's when you change the way you're looking at something, that's something that you're looking at actually changes. And it just always reminds me of the power and that power perspective. It's my whole intention for even having these conversations with people all over is showing that, there's this thread between us that's the magic.
Yeah, and there's a connection. There's a connection. Absolutely, there is. It's like when I was 27. I was at the lowest point of my life at that point. I was so riddled with fear, and I'm going into that detox clinic, and I'm thinking my life's going to end. I'm never going to have another drink. How terrible is this? There's nothing to look forward to. I had no hope. I had no positive expectation for the future. And I found myself connecting with this group of complete strangers talking about, our crazy stories. And it was an emotional connection. It's, you talk about, I've got a story, you've got a story, and we can all have a laugh and a giggle when we share some of the silly things we've done in our misspent youth. But it's an emotional connection because you're all in the same place. And it's that spiritual connection that's the community, and there's strength in that. So there's complete strangers who've been down the same path that I've been down in life, very similar with a violent background. it's almost like a cliche, violent family background, and then into alcoholism and drug addiction. It's extremely, we're so many of us, and we're brothers. We're absolutely brothers, and I feel a kinship with all of these people. And then to have a life where I get to help them get well and stay well is just a fantastic opportunity. And it's knowledge. And I'm not, it's not, I didn't create it. I'm passing the message on. So it's what I've been taught, and then I'm passing that on to others. So, I was told that, you need to get well and stay well. That's what you need to do if you don't want to pick up another drink. So, and then if you look at, for instance, the 12-step program, which is obviously fairly universal today, if you actually look at that, and if I was to give you a synopsis, and I've obviously lived that program and all the rest of it, but if I was to give you a synopsis of it, it is a wellness program. That's exactly what it is. It is a spiritual house cleaning wellness program. It is clean your house, clean your side of the street, clean up your mess, and then stay well. That's exactly what it is if you go through those 12 steps.
Ooh,
and it
that
doesn't
just gave
matter.
me chills.
It doesn't matter whether you're applying it to gambling or overeating or it doesn't matter. It's a wellness program. That's what it's about. And when you break it down, we say it's a simple program for complicated people. And this is one of the problems that, for instance, we talk about denial. I always say to people, I love the saying, to be forewarned is to be forearmed. So by knowledge, by knowing this stuff, you can see the signposts when you might look at yourself and you might say, yeah, I'm guilty of that, I'm doing that. Or more often, we often see behaviours in other people that we recognise immediately. We identify with other people, not so much with ourselves. identifying with yourself is one of the tricks. You've got to actually work at seeing it in yourself. But denial's an interesting one because, I've got a feeling brain, and my feeling brain's this childlike brain with instant gratification in my head. It's the one that likes to eat sugar. It's the one that likes to feel good, and it's just in the moment. But it will do what we call a neocortex hijack, and it will convince my thinking brain this is a good idea. So, I want to smoke a cigarette. Hey, that's not a bad idea. I've got an 85-year-old, mother. She still smokes. One more won't kill me. So that's the feeling brain taking over the neocortex, the thinking brain. We call it a neocortex hijack, and that's denial. So you've got these two parts of your brain: the one that wants to be naughty, convincing the good one, the thinking one, right? That, come on, think of an excuse. We need an excuse. Come on, think of something. Think of an excuse. And the smarter you are, the greater your denial. Yeah. So you take
it's
a
all
person...
designed to make you feel comfortable.
This
is fun and comfortable, but I'm too aware that everything that I want, everything that I've ever desired in my life is through the doorway of uncomfortable. That's what it is. And I practice every day that. I practice that. I know that I'm making myself more aware that, the things I'm scared of, run. The things that run to it. And there's just this new way of thinking that you can create that is so empowering, especially after you connect the dots. Oh my God, I did this thing that scared the shit out of me. I did this, it's been about a year ago. I want to go do it again. Where you go sit in a, ice cold bath, for a couple of minutes, and then you get in the hot, stove. But it was something about this thing, but I, that whole day, scared to death. Oh my God. And I get in the thing thinking I'm going to freeze, but because of the amazing breath work that they teach you, I was actually hot as hell. And my brain was like, man, you're too hot to be in this, your body's too hot. You got to cool down. I'm I'm sitting in, I was just, all of a sudden I was aware of these little, what you just said, those two things going back at each other. Yeah. And I started laughing. And so the guy's got it on video of me laughing in this bath, and he goes, man, very few people actually get to that point where you're at. And he's like, how did you do that? And I'm sitting here observing my crazy ass mind, and this and I'm not experiencing anything in this freezing weather, in this ice, except for, damn, I'm too hot. It's just funny. So I totally get it. But I got one more question for you, and then we'll get our takeaways and kind of complete. You shared that about your sister. Have you, but that what became your rock bottom. Do you ever sense your sister during your journey?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you ever feel your sister with you on this journey? She's a part of it, even though she's not physical. Yeah,
it is. A suicide, if we can talk about that. And also, I think it's really important. I want to make the point that in the modern world, we avoid things. We don't talk about things. We say, oh, that's a trigger word. Don't say that. We need to give warnings, all this sort of thing. I've come through a different process. In fact, the exact reverse of desensitization. So it's talk about it, talk about it, talk about it, and talk about it. And then talk about it some more. So completely just process it to the point where it's just no big deal. Right, and certainly I've done a huge amount of processing on my sister's suicide, and in doing that, she, when someone suicides, you feel both the grief, but you also feel anger. So you have that grief and anger, which is really conflicting, really hard, because it's conflicting, because you think if she miraculously came back to life, I'd hug her and then I'd hit her. So, you have that kind of, and it's really, really, and of course that just drove me into more drinking. Yeah. So, but she in a way, I mean, and you want to make her passing and that terrible loss worth something. And I say to people, look, I don't know. I said it's not my place to decide. It's up to God. But I said I really feel that to some degree she died for my salvation. because it was her death that was the turning point for me that brought me to recovery. And then hopefully in my 30 plus years of recovery, at least I've saved maybe one life, through
you've saved
helping
way
others.
more than that.
So so she's part of that whole process that's happened, and that whole journey that's happened. She's very much part of that. And always, when you go into you sleep and your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, and we dream, and always wake up really smiling when I've had a dream with Shani in it. And it's always a good dream. It's always a positive, good dream. And she comes to me in those dreams, but she's certainly there in my thoughts, and she's certainly sitting on my shoulder in this journey. And I see her as being a critical part of that. She died for my salvation, and therefore it's important that I make my life mean something.
I pick up, like, I heard your sister say that like when you were talking before, and so like you've saved many more lives than one from her perspective. And like that agreement, like she was sharing with me that was the agreement that she had with you this time, and that you've had that agreement for her other times. And it's all part of, like, there was just this big dance with the energy of what was just dancing around. So that's where that question came from. So I'm glad you are aware of it. Because she also says she communicates with you through electronics. You just don't see it sometimes. Yeah. Just putting it out there. So, yes. Didn't mean to go off of that little tangent, but like, she was just so present while you were talking.
Yep.
I just wanted to know if you're aware that she's around you all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yes, you are so welcome. What's your takeaway from today?
Well, I really enjoyed it, and it's always good to talk this stuff. I love talking this talk. It's great to be on your podcast and sharing this with other people, and that's the key, isn't it? Communication, and and meeting you and talking with you, Michael, has been an absolute pleasure.
Yes.
Absolute pleasure.
Same here. Really, like you, as I mentioned before, like for me, that's the most powerful thing. That's how everything starts, is like the increased amount of awareness that we could process through our systems, that gives us more options, more ways to, evolve. And like, there's something about the conversation today that I know is going to help a lot of folks. Good. Like, because I couldn't help you're masterful at storytelling, and storytelling gets into the vibrations of our soul. So like, I know for me, it was a healing conversation. So thank you for waking up down under, and having that conversation with us today. And thank you so much for being here. And for you guys listening and watching out there, let me know what you guys thought. What awakenings did you have? What new ideas popped into your head as you were listening to this amazing conversation? Because at the core, I think we've all can share like whatever our own experiences are with the things that we made up to cover up our own perceived deficits. And I know we're all, as a society, as human beings, evolving out of that now. So thanks for listening. Share your stories with us, and we're going to see you on the next one. Bye, guys.